Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I see many familiar faces. Sebastian from Shenzhen, or is it Singapore? Good to
I'm
see
in
you back here
Singapore now.
again. Great. And we have Ka Leong. Hi, Ka Leong. I imagine you are in Singapore, Ka Leong. Right, and there's also Mr. Nguyen-Phuong Lam.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, hello. You must be
In Singapore. Yeah.
Nguyen-Phuong. Okay, good. Hello, Hui Ping. Hello, Zhang Jing. We've got Joseph So on board as well. Garrett from our last moderator. And Cordelia, our very faithful lawyer, who wrote a very interesting article. I would invite Cordy to share your article about 10 times rule in the chat room. Okay, welcome Jermaine. Jermaine is our speaker for next week's session. Hello, James. Yeah. All right. Okay. To all those who have signed in, welcome once again to OSG. And today we bring you the 8th edition of our Young Founders Weekly Webinar Series. And the topic title of this evening is Change Maker, Mr. Jeremy Nguyen-Phuong, co-founder of Udentity. And his topic for the evening is experiments, empathy, problem solving, and collaboration. And with us on the expert panel is Mr. Radi Ghazali, Director of GT Tire, and Mr. Clemens Tan, Managing Director of Cyber and TRM Advisory. Okay. I am happy to be your moderator of this evening. I'm the team leader of Marcom at OSG Youth Alliance. The structure for this evening's webinar is a simple one. I will provide a 5-minute introduction of OSG, and thereafter, Jeremy is going to share his story, his journey of social entrepreneurship, but with a twist, picture style. All right. Only pictures and no text. 20 seconds per slide. And at the end of the sharing, we will go on to the panel discussion where our expert panelists and Jeremy will join in a spirited discussion of various topics from journey to his current startup to maybe a little bit on the, I shall not steal the thunder. Okay, so that will run for 20 minutes. And thereafter, Q&A is what we all look forward to for 15 minutes. And do be reminded to post your questions at any time, your questions and comments in the Zoom chat window. And turn on your video and audio in advance if you'd like to interact directly with the speaker or the expert panel. Okay, and finally, we'll give a preview of next week's webinar before we say thank you and see you next week. Right, so a very brief introduction of OSG, and I'll go real fast. Okay, so this is the first season of OSG e-forum, online forum series featuring young founders. At OSG, we believe in the power of youth entrepreneurship. Okay. OSG is incorporated in Singapore and established in 2017. We are a social enterprise that serves a network of global-minded and enterprising youths who believe in creating positive impacts in the world today and the future. We've got, our programs are all focused on global-minded youths. And our presence have extended from Singapore, Shanghai, to beyond that to Beijing, Shenzhen, and Hangzhou. Core programs. Okay, apart from our weekly webinar series, which is created specifically to address the current COVID situation. I'm sorry, for participants, if you are not contributing at the moment as yet, may I request that you mute your audio. Okay, we are also in collaboration with FUSA, in short for Fudan University Singaporean Students Association, and SSA Beijing, in short for Singapore Students Association Beijing, the e-forum series. Okay, and beyond that, we have actually started this series of programs, regular ones, Mentor for Mentee, Youth for Change, Learn for Exposure, and the signature events that's going to coming up in the fourth quarter this year and the first quarter next year. Okay. Our weekly webinar series, the all past 7 episodes are available on the YouTube. So that is the link, OSG Youth Alliance. Look out for that. Okay. The e-forum series, the 3rd edition is scheduled for 27th June, again on a Saturday. We'll share with you more when it's ready. Okay. For exposure. Right, so there you go. Our website, osg.sg, is constantly updated. So do visit our website for your regular updates. And if you'd like to be included in our emailing list, just give me, Eng Han, or Miss Lily Wong a call, and we'll add you to our emailing list. Okay, so thank you, guys. Without further ado, let's proceed with our webinar tonight. Okay. Firstly, a brief introduction of Jeremy, the co-founder of Udentity. Excuse me, one of us, your audio is not muted, and it may affect the proceedings. Could I request that you mute yourself? Okay, so a bit about Jeremy. Jeremy spent 5 years at Ashoka, the largest network of leading social enterprises, where he relaunched the Singapore office. He started his social entrepreneurship journey in 2003 at the age of 12, where he founded a charity to support children in Vietnam. He moved to Shanghai 3 years ago to co-found Udentity and Change Leader Academy. And Jeremy is a graduate from Pitzer College, where he majored in economics and interestingly designed a minor, and that's on social entrepreneurship. Gentlemen, for our expert panelists, that's Riley and Clemens. I will invite them to make a brief introduction when we are at the discussion panel. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Jeremy for his sharing. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Kent, and also thank you, OSG, for the opportunity to share a little bit of my story and some insight about my experiences in social entrepreneurship. So the way I was going to do this presentation is a little bit different because we are quite zoomed out at this point, right? So I just wanted to instead just have you see a bunch of pictures, and I will tell a little bit of my story where each slide will go through every 20 seconds. And then basically, if I miscue or miss time, that's my issue, and I'll just have to move on to the next topic. But just to check, can you see my PowerPoint at the moment? Yep, all good. Okay. So the topic I was going to discuss a little bit about today was about using soft skills or essential skills and how that can relate to whatever industry you're in. So a little bit of my background. I'm a third culture kid, born in the UK, grew up in Singapore, Vietnamese from both sides of my parents, went to college in the US, worked in Washington, DC, where I started at Ashoka, and currently live in Shanghai. And so I was never a good student, to be honest. I was only good at one thing, which is the ability to connect with people and sell things, right? So the way I saw it was options were quite open, and I thought, why not experiment different things, test out things that I like, things that I don't like, but eventually to find out what could be my passion. And so one thing that really started was my parents are both Vietnamese. We, after moving to Singapore, we actually spent more time connecting to Vietnam and our heritage. This is a picture of me in our ancestral village in Vietnam. And I think the experience that really resonated me and opened my mind was to be able to see challenges that children were facing in Vietnam. And that led us to building ECOP with my friends and the Vietnamese diaspora in Singapore, where we, in a traditional charity fashion, we raise money to support different projects helping children in Vietnam. And this, and word empowering is not just to help those that are underprivileged, but empower those Vietnamese that never grew up in Vietnam to reconnect back to their heritage. So here are some photos of the charity work that we did. And I think what made it really powerful was we used the collaboration opportunities through our network of Vietnamese diaspora in Singapore, our friends who were interested in engaging in social projects, but also charity partners in Vietnam. And after discovering that interest in social and charitable work, I overall kind of learned about more curiosity and exploration and different ideas and models at my time at Pitzer College. So it's a liberal arts school, classes are very small, and through that experience, I got to get more exposure to different ideas and concept and debate. And one thing that really came about it was my time in Botswana, where I spent 6 months over there testing out different industries that really opened my mind to what was going on around the world. So there I worked at a diamond mine, I worked at a tourism promotion for entrepreneurs, and also worked at a wild dog research facility that was part of the ones that did Planet Earth and all. But that experience allowed me to test different industries, open my eyes and see that there are different problems out there and ones that we should be more exposed to. But one thing that really exposed my sort of interest in the social entrepreneurship space was when my father was given this book from a meeting that he had. And this is a book from David Bornstein that really opened the world to social entrepreneurship, where there are individuals out there creating incredible solutions that challenge systems and frameworks that meet a social need. And so there were many different social entrepreneur stories that came about, but I guess I'll highlight the one that some of the ones that I've worked with: Andreas Heinecke, Caroline Casey, Anshu Gupta, who are individuals that create solutions that help social problems, but in the way that it is more collaborative and more empathetic. And so that during my time at Ashoka, that's where it is the largest network of social entrepreneurs. I got exposed to these different models and how these change makers use empathy as a skill set to be able to resonate with the people that they're trying to help, collaborate with them, and then change the way we view these problems. And so the founder of that organization, Bill Drayton, the way he perceives it is, you look at these social entrepreneurs, they create amazing models that are either for-profit or non-profit, but at the end of the day, they are change makers and they want to build these problems using those essential soft skills to be able to build a world where problems outrun the solutions outrun the problems. Going on to the part it resonated with me was, I found the education system around the world was outdated, more like an industrial model where you look at all these types of individual youth and you kind of just give them a framework of what they have to follow and what they have to do. So I used the inspiration from those different social entrepreneurs, and my wife, who is also my co-founder, we decided to move to Shanghai to create a social entrepreneurship workshop for high school students, where we ran the Change Lead Academy for 2.5 years, doing workshops to over 300 students, where they basically go through the process on building an idea that met a social need. And there are many stories I can tell you, but maybe I'll share one story of a student who saw a problem in their school was a lot of kids getting detention. And the problem with that is these students always never understood why they got detention. So they built a legal system in school where the teachers, the students got involved in a debate that allowed them to understand better why they got detention, and then eventually be more aware of what's going on. So we saw this, that we want to build a mission of helping students, youth, to find their unique identities. So building a world where they can explore, develop education opportunities that meet their interests, and showcase that, and then be able to build their own journey themselves. So that's why it's called Udentity, building a unique identity, where the current vertical that we are doing is working with universities to help students explore on their own, showcase their profile and learn experience, and find the right university that meets their needs and interests. And eventually, our plan is to be able to connect them to education programs, or connect them to maybe social challenges that exist around the world that allow them to see that that unique identity that they have is able to be a change maker in their own way, but they really need to explore for themselves, test things out, experiment, and then develop those skills. So those skills that I've been constantly trying to develop, but seen from other change makers, are the ability to be empathetic, collaborative, problem solvers that demonstrate leadership and grit. So these are all kind of muscles and skill sets that we all need to try and develop. It's all kind of within us. And this for me is a great analogy for things where you look at, you know, we are all like this horse at the beginning, right? This chair has no boundary for us, but if we think it's a mental blockage, it's hard for us to experiment, pivot, and see what exists out there and find the challenges that we want to address. And so I'm happy to share a little bit more after this discussion or after this meeting, but I believe that we should all kind of see the value in change makers and social entrepreneurs and how it incorporates in our daily life and how we can use that to build solutions that outrun the challenges around the world. So that's my Pechakucha presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jeremy. I think that's remarkable. You have a really remarkable and interesting journey. But before we move on to our panel discussion,
Yep.
I actually have a burning question. Because when you talk especially of a change leadership, excuse me, you do, okay, and I say this in general, that all of us, whether we're on stage or, you know, our 30-odd participants, all of us are leaders of change in our own right, one way or other. So this is the question. What do you think are the biggest social changes that we're experiencing at this moment in time? And two, what are the things in your opinion that you believe that must not change over time, even amidst COVID-19? Jeremy?
Sorry, can you just repeat that last sentence for the second question?
Yeah, it's like this.
What would you, what do you believe must not change over time, even amidst the current COVID-19 situation?
Okay. If it's okay, I'll start with that one first. I mean, I think in my opinion, we live in a very strange situation where basically everyone is almost forced to be confined in their own homes or in their own country, for instance, right? For the first time in a while, and I think what needs to
meeting, I want to listen.
Yeah, 1 second. So I would say what needs to not change is for the ability that when, say, the world opens up, we need to remember how we connected, socialize, and engage with one another. Because one thing that I see in today's world is, you know, we are very siloed in our political opinions, our beliefs and values, that if we don't want to connect with another human being, we are comfortable with shutting off or reading only news or content related to what we're interested in. And I think we still need to, as humans, build that curiosity to learn and empathize with others. And the first question was, what skills do we need to really develop as change makers during this time, right? Or just in general?
In general?
Yeah, I mean, that one's a little bit tricky, because I'm just, you know, a young entrepreneur that deals with my own sector. But I think what would be important would be to as much as we can be focused on particular industries or be specialists in certain areas, I think it's always important to see how whatever industries that we're involved in, it does have a strong correlation to a social cause. So one of those sustainable development goals, right? So I think we need to look at how models, where a nonprofit, for-profit can address those social challenges happening around the world and change the way we do business and look at how we value things. So less material mindset and more sort of collaborative and socially minded.
Right, thank you, Jeremy. Now, let's start with our panel discussion. May I invite perhaps Clemens and followed by Radi to give a brief introduction of yourselves, and then go ahead to pose your questions to Jeremy. Clemens?
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Clemens. I currently run my own advisory firm for cybersecurity and risk management. Before that, I was in a corporate environment for years. I started out in the central bank and financial regulations for years. And I went on to financial institutions, Citibank, Viva, as well as consulting firms, KPMG, and company called specializing in IT security. Before I started out my firm, right? So recently, I've been doing some projects, advisory technology company based in China, talent system for cybersecurity and data protection, as well as venture capitalism in Singapore, cybersecurity startup company. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Clemens. Clemens, there's some echo in your audio. So perhaps you would like to tweak it a little before we go on to the discussion later. Over to Radi.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Hi everyone. My name is Riyadi Ghazali. Currently, I'm a director at GT Tire. I live in Shanghai for more than 10 years. And at GT Tire, I work at the various functions like purchasing, R&D, equipment center, setting up production line and factory. And before GT Tire, I work as a consultant in web technologies and e-commerce. And I enjoy diversity, and really like working with people from different countries, different culture. That's yes. And so I also like not only working as a professional, I also like as an independent investor, as company. This webinar and talking with everyone. Thanks.
Right, thank you, Radi. And back to Clemens. Hi, Clemens. Quick check if your audio is okay.
Yeah, is it better now?
Okay. Yeah, great. I think we all hear you loud and clear. Your first question, please.
Sure. I think as a startup company, I think one common challenge is how to establish credibility. So question for Jeremy is how do you deal with that, establishing credibility of your business?
Yep, thanks, Clement. So I would say, especially because it's a little bit trickier because we're doing an industry that we had zero experience in, aside from just being students studying university overseas, right? So what we had done was we spent quite a good amount of time speaking with various stakeholders to really understand the needs and challenges that they had, and really got them to feel engaged and involved in the process. So I remember the early days where we just had a drawing showing universities and students what it could look like, and then getting their honest feedback to build up that platform to what it is now. And I think what really built the credibility, at least for those users, was they could see the vision, see the idea, and we carried them through that process where they felt like they could contribute to the ideas more, and that every time there was feedback, whether it's harsh or positive, we incorporated that into the solution, which is thankfully why they use our platform today.
Yeah, I saw a question from the floor by Zhang Qing about something about the choosing Shanghai to set up Udentity. And incidentally, in our conversation with Raidi last evening, and Raidi was very interested in your Shanghai venture and motivation. Perhaps we could invite Raidi to present you the question.
Sure. Hi, Jeremy. I have a question for you. It's like first, what motivates you to start this venture in Shanghai? And also, what are some of the valuable experience and lessons you like to share with us this evening?
Thank you, Radi. So, okay, the reason why we moved to Shanghai was when we were exploring that Change Leader Academy program. We had run demo workshops to high schools and students in Singapore and in Shanghai as well. And even though Singapore was much more familiar, the partners over here were a lot more eager to jump on board, and it definitely was a risk moving here. I mean, my wife is Chinese, but hasn't lived here in a long time. So we just kind of took the leap to give it a go. Stayed here ever since, just because it's fast moving and very exciting for many different industries. But I think the luxury of being a young startup, especially in technology, is depending on where it goes down the road, there is fluidity to move around. So that could be even Beijing or Shenzhen, for instance, or somewhere else within Asia. But key takeaways, things to learn, I think it's always important to have a good community of stakeholders as like your advisors who provide you advice on either wing, right? So I have my family as one resource. I have advisors, including Eng Han at OSG, to be very upfront with me, and I think learning from folks like yourself really give young entrepreneurs the platform to learn and grow and be able to experiment and pivot like this.
Yeah, Jeremy, just to be sure, before coming to Shanghai in 2017, you have never been here for any kind of like commercial endeavors?
I came to run I came on one visit before to run do a speaking engagement for Ashoka, but no business beforehand. So I'm a little bit of a recluse and wild one, to be honest.
You are very bold and courageous. Yeah, Clemens, you have a question for Jeremy next.
Yeah, the other question I have is on competitors. I mean, it is after all a business. So have you identified who your competitors are, and how do you see your competitive advantage to be?
Yep. So at the time when we started, the field was very very limited in terms of competitors. We were more early into the game. I would say when with COVID-19 now, with universities unable to travel and engage with students, there's definitely a lot more newer players. But I think what allows us to stand out is the way we brought on different stakeholders and work with them. For instance, like the high school side is something that a lot of these other players don't do, is one advantage. And the other one I would say is the fact that some of these companies that have popped up are related to education companies that some universities are actually not wanting to collaborate with, either because of unethical practices in the past, or they just have a lot of concerns working with like certain education agents.
Yeah, thank you. But Jeremy, if I may, just follow up with a question from Clement's question. Yeah, in the recent decades or so, we've always talked about collaboration. So what I'm curious is that in the past 3 years, did you have that kind of experience like competitors turn collaborators?
I mean, when we were doing the Change Leader Academy, I think there were definitely quite a few other organizations that were competitors to us who I'm quite lucky to be friends with some of the founders of those companies. There was not much room to collaborate back then, but the funny thing is now with this current Udentity platform, since we do have different verticals that we plan to cover, there are now ways, since we've cut down the work with Change Leader Academy, we can collaborate with those partners, because the way I see it, the programs that we run were good, but there are so many other players out there. So if we were to build that sort of platform for students to connect to programs like a Change Leader Academy or its competitors, is where we can have more influence and scale.
Yeah, I am just going through the list of participants tonight.
Yep.
It looks like a sea of not shark-looking people. I think there are lots of opportunities for collaboration, even among our participants tonight. So really, right at the end of the webinar, I would very much encourage all of us who are interested in collaborating or even getting to know with Jeremy. We can do it right at the end of a webinar. Yeah. Over to Radi. Radi, you have a question on vision?
Yeah, my next question to Jeremy is like, what is your vision for Udentity, and like, what are the unique value propositions and your measure of success for this organization?
So the vision that I see for this platform is I want to, and it doesn't have to be identical, obviously, but I would like to see it to become something like a sea trip of education of sorts, where you have a student who's interested in enhancing a specific skill or understand better how picking different programs or universities could lead them to a path, like an education path or a career that they desire and meets their sort of passions or unique identity, right? So that's why we started with this vertical, because with universities and higher education, was because we saw a lot of the struggles that students were having in terms of finding that information and being able to connect. And hopefully down the road, we can be able to transition to other areas too. But the metrics that we do in the short term, at least, are the ability to have as many universities around the world on board as like client users, and then the amount of events and engagement and how students interact with them to eventually apply will be those key metrics.
Yeah. And again, Jeremy, to follow up with on Radi's question on vision, right? Some say that vision is something that at night before sleep, or before you even wanted to sleep or can sleep, you close your eyes and you can entirely imagine the vision of the world that you want to create, that you want to bring collaborators, partners to create, to benefit the people or the beneficiaries. So do you have that kind of experience, and it's a personal question, that every night before you sleep, that you do think and dream, think of that vision that you so intensely wanted to achieve? Do you have that experience like every night?
maybe not every night, just because sometimes I dream about small tech developing features on our platform. But I mean, I think one thing that I have been very lucky is I have a family that's been very supportive and sacrifice, you know, throughout their life to give their children the opportunity to, so my siblings and I, the opportunity to build our own journey and life that we want, right? And I mean, I don't want any other youth to go through the same experience I had, but I want them to be able to build that that like sort of pathway for them to do what they want or do what they want to try out. And I think that's what I have been lucky to have and have seen, is that there are kids out there that build their own social entrepreneurship venture, or they kind of develop skills on their own. But I do hope that one day we live in that world where, you know, if you kind of set your mind to it, you use those skills, develop those muscles, and then you use the resources you have to help whatever community it is. If it's the world, that's fantastic. If it's just your family or your building, that's also fantastic as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, I note that one of your many guardian angels are on in our meeting tonight, and if you or him comfortable, I will invite him to come up and say a few words at the end of this discussion. Right. Okay. Yeah. Back to Clemens. If you have a question for Jeremy.
Maybe leading to what Ken was asking about, you know, experiences. I was wondering whether you have an experience where you suffered a pitfall, and what have you learned from it?
I actually haven't suffered a big enough pitfall to, I would say it's more of like minor pitfalls or struggles along the way. I do remember about like 2 years ago when we were doing those Change Leader Academy programs, we had the idea of building Udentity, and we got to pitch to quite a few high-profile educational entrepreneurs in China, and there were some that basically were interested in the idea, but the way they saw us was, my wife and I as entrepreneurs, was this is just an idea that we can absorb and then shift it to how we want it, right? So those meetings in early days where we were trying to bring on other investors or partners was definitely a struggle, where a lot of them would either want to morph it into what they're familiar with in terms of traditional consulting businesses. A lot of shoot downs in those conversations, but I think going our own path and trying to build it an organic way that we see it is something that I've enjoyed as a learning experience and continue to do.
Thanks, Clemens.
I have to say that you're pretty lucky that you haven't suffered a pitfall, but it may not necessarily be a good thing, because I mean, for the fellow entrepreneurs here, I'm sure, you know, you learn the most when you suffer, you know, something. And I think COVID-19 is probably also an opportunity to reflect and think about what we really wanted. If, you know, it doesn't happen to you, it happened to people around you, I think it can serve as a good lesson learned. So learning from other people's experiences will be just as valuable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Righty.
Right. Yeah, I have a question. The third question I have is like, how did the COVID pandemic impact your business? And like, And what are your short-term and longer-term measures to deal with it?
Yeah, so I guess the education technology space is one of those industries that really benefited during this time with a lot of everyone having to do education online or remotely. And so for us, at least, the universities realize that this is the only means for them to be able to connect with students, because they are familiar with traveling over to China, for instance, to do these talks, but now they see that they have to do it online, and the advantages that they have to doing it online are related to getting data insights on where they should consider to do more outreach or strategies, so that even when after the world returns to this new normal, they don't need to travel as they used to. But in terms of the measures, I think during this time, we just push for as many users and as many events as possible. Going a little bit merging with what Clemens had asked earlier, I think I do see that after people can travel again, we would need to be prepared that there will be a pitfall where people want to return to what they were familiar with. And I think that's where we have to be innovative and be able to adapt quite quickly to say, well, why should you still use this platform? And what other means can we do to blend both the offline and the online experience? And so I think it is, Timmons is right, it is important to learn from those pitfalls and prepare for potential ones when, you know, we may be doing well now, but there will come a time where what we do, if it doesn't adapt or change, we can suffer from it.
Jeremy, so do you see like a growing concern for the Chinese going overseas for studies? And because your business model is focusing on like basically Asians going to overseas for studies.
Mm.
Given at the situation, while in China, do you consider like also establishing this platform for students from different cities to consider like a different university within China itself, or like other part of Asia?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that's something that's very much like something that a lot of universities are worried right now. The numbers do show that were already actually showing that Chinese students were already reducing their preference to study in the US due to political tension. But one thing that was clear was, if they were to look at other countries, where would they be? And that was before the whole pandemic. Now it's a situation where in the upcoming semester, all these Chinese students will have to do their classes online. And that is a serious question for parents is, do I pay the full tuition and have my child at home do the class? Or do I send them to another university, whether it's in China, and that could be very wide range of options, like a private university, or it could be within Asia. So actually, from some surveys that we just sent out, there were a lot of parents that are considering sending their child to Japan, Korea, even Singapore, if it's possible, because they want them to be closer to home and know that these universities could fill the international education that they want their child to have.
Well, thank you. Perhaps at this point, before we move on to the question and answer from the floor, here's a question that is for both our guests, our panelists, Clemens and Radi, that from your perspective, representing your own industry, what are the kind of like measures that your business or your industry is coming up with in response to the COVID situation? Radi, if you'd like to start first.
Sure. I think currently the COVID situation is definitely causing a lot of disruption in terms of like the people consumption habit, the market demand, and like spending. And like being in the automotive industry, we do face a lot of challenge with the reduced traveling and the closing of like retail stores and the distribution not opening. So what we are doing right now is mainly is like really focusing on improving the internal improvement and focusing a lot on like the digital marketing, digital site, and also just get prepared when eventually when the market recovers and picks up, we are in a very good position to capture the growth.
Excellent. Thank you, Radi. How about Clemens on your end, especially in the business of cybersecurity? Clemens?
Sure. I think cybersecurity is a growing area, as many of you would have known. I mean, where people are more working from home, there is concerns on online security and data privacy, which has been a long-standing issue. It's just that now there's a further, scrutiny of it. Some of you could have heard of the Zoom bombing, the hacking incident on Zoom sessions. While we are having this session, someone can join in if we didn't have a proper access control, and that is of course not good. If you can listen in and even show some obscene pictures, as we have heard of people in the educational industry. So this is something that bring forward, the acceleration that is needed for us to look into this area, security and privacy. As digitalization become more prevalent, actually security and privacy is a must-have, right? So I would say, technology is an enabler for online business, and security and privacy will be the ones that can disable your business. So I think that is even for a business like Jeremy's, is an area you may have to look into when your business scale to a certain level. It all comes down to reputation, branding, trust that the customers will have in your business. And when you are operating online, this online trust becomes even more crucial. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Clemens and Radi. Let's move on to take on questions from the floor. Zhang Jing earlier on posed a question. May I ask why you choose Shanghai to set up Udentity? I believe this question has been answered. Zhang Jing, and if you have a follow-up question, I would encourage you to post it on the group chat. Okay, now let's see. Billy. Billy has a question. Social enterprise is huge. Social enterprises are huge as they encompass many aspects. Does Udentity have a clear target market? And what kind of resistance do you face in a market like China, social enterprise? Yeah. Jeremy?
The social enterprise sort of trend, and in the word, I think is almost a topic on its own. But I do essentially believe that in the world that we live in now, it is important to be having a mission-driven model where you're basically a business for good. But when it comes to things like what Udentity does, the clear market, at least of what we do now, is we are the beneficiary is the student at the end of the day, giving them a platform for them to learn and explore. But the target market in terms of who the customer is, it is the university. So when we do outreach, we focus on the university being subscription-based model user. So I think that's that target market part. Resistance, I think the tricky part is the attention span of students is very low. So I guess there is, you know, a lot of difficulty getting their eyeballs and their attention to use a platform like ours. So I think that as a young entrepreneur, we have to try and constantly find ways to maybe look at their sort of other nodes around the students that we can tap into to get them to see the value in the platform and use it more, and then eventually build in more features to encourage the students to see the value and how they can gamify that experience, for instance. But China is a very complicated market for any industry. I think everything moves so fast here. Competitors come in and out constantly. But I think the exciting part is we will start to see a shift in terms of innovative ideas, where we always relied on the West to do it, to being more to Greater Asia. And I think it's exciting to be a young entrepreneur and seeing it every day.
Thanks, Jeremy. Billy, if you have got a follow-up question, I do encourage you to post so. But meanwhile, back to Jeremy. Well, I do have questions for you. That's before the next question pop up. We note that while you are running Udentity as your full-time, full-day business, you are also running Change Leadership Academy as your social enterprise, and you are also running a family. You have a family, right? So how do you balance between Udentity, which is your business, Change Leadership Academy, which is your social enterprise, and then family? How do you strike a balance between the three entities?
Okay, well, Kent, this is not a very good answer, but my balance is my wife and I work on all those things together, and I strongly encourage if you've never worked with your better half before, yeah, maybe don't jump in like immediately. I mean, we're doing all these things 24/7. We do our best to not talk about work over the weekends or after we're done from work. It's tricky, but I think the lucky part is our skill sets are so different. She's like a lot more like visionary and stronger minded on decision making than I am, whereas I provide the skill sets in like the partnership and engagement. But I do see it's kind of like when times are tough, they're definitely tough, but you know, when we're both in the flow and in the zone, I think that's what you look for in like your people that you collaborate with or your partners, is to have that syncness where you can do any type of project regardless of what industry you're in. I think that's what makes like the change makers I got to interact with at Ashoka and other parts of my life is really doesn't matter what industry they do, they will build a great solution and they have a great group of people they work with collaboratively.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. I'll take that as your best answer for the night. Okay, we have time for, we've got two questions. Yeah, let's have these two, let's address these two questions in brief, and then we'll call it the evening. So from Dr. James Ong, his question is, Jeremy, shouldn't all entrepreneurship be social enterprise, as meaningful purpose is a key factor for success for starting and sustaining a business?
Oh, that's a great question. I believe so, that every business that is really trying to stick to that mission of doing some form of good is essentially, they start out as a social enterprise. The trick is if they were to follow in the lines of where profits and money is what, and the stakeholders as what drives what the mission becomes, I think that's when it gets tricky, because you look at businesses today, you've got a lot of these fantastic organizations that maybe are not as we don't use as day-to-day, like things like Google and Facebook, but there are organizations out there that are mainstream that we see, whether it's like Ben and Jerry's, Patagonia, even Adobe Systems. These are businesses that are actually social enterprises, and you just have to look deeper into what they do, not just on a CSR level, but actually as the main portion of their business that tackle different social challenges. And I'm, happy to maybe share a list of all these organizations or resources that I use to look at these different models to be inspired by. But I think eventually looking at things like the benefit corporations, those businesses are the models of how we should do business in the future, where it is for profit, but the way they do things, they look at the supply chain or the beneficiaries that they work with, they solve that need and maintain financial sustainability.
That's an excellent answer, Jeremy. Yeah, as for the resources that you would like to share, private message to us, and then we'll post the resources, the online resources, as part of our throwback video on YouTube, as well as on our osg.sg website. Okay, the next question is from Chongming. Jeremy, you look very young. Is it difficult for you to convince enterprises to buy services or consultants from you? Especially Change Academy on this topic needs many years of experience.
Yes, I look very young, definitely down to good genes. That one is very tricky, right? Because we deal in the education space. So oftentimes when we go into meetings, a lot of people assume that like I'm a student, and they're like, "Wow, a very nice pet project," right? But I think that's being in Asia, I think that's one uphill battle that we have to fight. Is there is a little bit of ageism where experience and how you look can determine how people.
I'm losing Jeremy a bit. Hey, Jeremy. It looks like Jeremy's screen has frozen. There is one last question from Billy. Coming in?
Yeah, Jeremy's kind of dropped off, right? Yeah, this is Billy speaking. So yeah, I'm actually, so maybe later when he gets back on, or
perhaps later. Yeah, because we are running out of time.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeremy?
He should be educating our politicians, actually.
Okay, this is OSG, no talk of politics.
No,
at least online.
Politicians in general.
But yeah, that question about whether, because like especially in the education industry, because I've known not just Singaporean friends, but all over, including American and Hong Konger friends who intend to set up education-related businesses in Shanghai in particular. So they do face, of course, there are lots of regulations. So would very much like Jeremy to address this question in brief. But let's see if Jeremy is coming online.
We're reaching out to him through WeChat, maybe. Yeah, because I'm really interested to know, because his is not like a typical secondary school or high school, university kind of program where he has a fixed program that he can kind of submit and follow through. His is actually very... Okay. Oh,
good.
He's back.
Yeah, Jeremy is back. Yeah, Billy, since you're on, your voice and is on, keep your question to very brief and address it to Jeremy.
All right. Hey, Jeremy, welcome back. Yeah, I'm interested to know, how do you go around, if the government has any form of restriction on your type of business, since it really encourage students in challenging social norms, if I may say that. So how do you actually get about it? How do you submit a proposal to them? And because your program is actually much more spontaneous and impromptu, very tailored to the specific group of people that you are training in that particular time. So how does this actually impact your relationship with the government, if any?
Yeah. Okay, Jeremy, your answer in brief, please. Yeah.
My apologies. The first part of the question got cut off. Billy's first question, the first part of Billy's question.
Actually, it was a follow-up from my previous question. So the follow-up question is, I'm interested to know if the government, China government, since you're now in Shanghai, if the Chinese government has any form of restriction on your business, since your business involves encouraging students to challenge social norms.
Oh, yeah. I mean, with the Change Leader Academy part, we are definitely far too small for the government to ever pay attention to. But
Wait, I think we are losing you a bit, Jeremy. Yeah. No.
Anyway,
yeah. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, let's move on. Billy, no, let's move on. We are running out of time, Billy. Okay, I'm sorry, got to cut off a little bit. Yeah, Mr. Senior Nguyen-Phuong. Hello, Mr. Nguyen-Phuong Senior. Could I invite you? Oh, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, do you have a word? Where are you now?
I'm in Singapore.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Yeah, would you like to say hello to Jeremy and our participants tonight?
Hello.
And you've got, yeah.
Very good being here.
You look very young.
Well, it's in the genes, as Jeremy said, but I'm not that young. And no OSG.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you and for having Jeremy to share with us so much. And yeah, we note that Jeremy did suggest that in future, perhaps in our next season of our OSG online seminars or workshop, that we may have a session for a parent and child kind of a panel. That would be interesting. Well, thank you, Mr.
I'll be
Nguyen-Phuong
pleased
Senior.
to do that. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. And now we are coming to the end of our webinar. Yeah. So coming up next, the second last webinar of our Young Founders series is featuring Jermaine Tay next Thursday, the founder of Ad Experts. And because Billy is on board right now and is going to be our moderator, so may I invite Billy to just give us a preview akan datang of what is in stock next Thursday. Billy? Hello, Billy.
Yes, I would encourage all of you to spread among your friends as well, to invite them to participate and join us next Thursday for the webinar by Jermaine Tay. Very interesting story, as with all our Young Founders series. It's always interesting to hear how this, young professionals who went through normal education programs and for some reason decide that they don't want to go into companies and work 9 to 5 or and decide to choose the 24/7 path okay, of entrepreneurship. So I think next Thursday, I do encourage you guys to join in as well, same time at 7:30. So we look forward to seeing all of you and your friends and your contacts and your network, your parents, everybody, your children, bring them in. I think it's going to be very interesting as well.
Well, thank you, Billy. Jermaine Tay's session is going to be very interesting. Her life thus far has been a whole journey of likes and unlikes. Okay, so before we end this session, as always, I'd like to have a one-liner, okay, a takeaway or a word of advice from our featured panelists and speakers tonight. Yeah, starting with Clemens, what is your one-liner advice to Jeremy and our audience in general? Clemens?
Clemens, I think
No,
you are
I can't
on
pin
mute.
Clemens. Yeah, Clemens, if you
I'm
could
sorry,
unmute
I was
yourself,
talking on
please.
mute.
Okay.
Right. So I'll make it brief, right? I think there's two schools of thought. If you start a business early, right, you have the energy, the passion, you can chiong, right? But you may not have the experience and probably even, some say the credibility to do certain things to convince the customers. But if you become too not so young, then you may, have more opportunity costs. You may not really, have the drive, the energy to be a startup and entrepreneur to put in the late hours. So it's a balance between the two. And I think the COVID-19 actually now make us aware that sometimes we just have to see things from a different perspective and challenge conventional wisdom. So I do encourage everyone to see the road ahead. What is the best way that you can move your career along, be it in a corporate life or as an entrepreneur. Thank you.
Thank you, Clemens, to challenge conventional wisdom regardless. Over to Riley. What's your one-liner advice to all of us?
I think definitely we are in this year 2020. We is in a very strange situation, which is unprecedented. I think to like Jeremy is like I guess this is also like a reflection as kind of regroup, reframed, or
Riley, we are losing you a bit and the connection.
include everyone team to collaborate at this time. This human connection and collaboration and the trust building and relationship. I guess it's more important and emphasis on this part. And definitely keep going. I respect your courage and boldness to have this venture and to move in the thing. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Riley. Keep going, and to borrow your business, keep rolling. Right. Yeah, keep rolling. Okay, Jeremy, the last word is yours.
Am I back? Does it work?
Yeah, it works.
Okay. I would just say, last word is this time is a great time to give yourself self-permission to relearn something, learn something new, and try something different out. I think if you had a goal when you were either in university or starting your first job, don't feel locked down on those things. I think it's a good time to reflect and not be bogged down of how difficult things are around the world, and to make the best out of a strange situation.
All right. If you can bring it down to 3 words, what would be that 3 words?
3 words.
3 words.
Oh, I maybe I could just go with the motto that I shared with you last night.
Do it.
It was like in the end everything will be okay. If it's not okay, it is not yet the end.
Got it.
Yeah.
Right, thank you very much. Yeah, we're ready for a group photo. Lily has alerted us all. For those of us who have not turned on the video, now is the time. Yeah, Watson, my photographer brother, he's here to support. Yeah, Kiefer, James, Chongming, Kalion, don't be shy, come on. Yeah. Winston, Dr. Winston Yor is here as well. Dennis, our ex-Mr. Singapore. Dennis? And Garrett, our moderator from the last session. Yeah, please turn your video on real quickly. Many of us got to run for dinner soon. Oh, hi, Winston. Hi, Josephine. Hi, Kalion. There's a winter flame. Garrett. Okay, let's do it. Okay, Lily, you ready? Who's going to shoot? Okay, Anh Han. Well, thank you very much. Once again, thank you all, and thank you, Jeremy. And our